Pastry chef Anna Olson.
If your special birthday someone is a serious chocolate lover, then you need to get serious about my chocolate truffle cake.
We see one.
This is inspired by a chocolate blackout cake. And the first thing I have to do is melt some chocolate. I've got 3 ounces chopped here.
In a bowl.
And this isn't coffee for me. This is coffee for the cake. 3/4 of a cup.
In a mug.
Hot coffee that I'm gonna pour right on top of the chocolate. While that sits, I'll sift my dry ingredients. So I've got 2 cups of all-purpose flour.
She pours it in the sifter.
And 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar.
She adds it to the flour.
And for leavening, I have a teaspoon of baking soda, 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/2 a teaspoon of salt.
She adds them.
What about the most important ingredient, my cocoa powder?
She adds it.
1/2 a cup of cocoa.
Then she sifts.
It's just gonna get everywhere. I think you have to accept when you're making a chocolate cake, you're gonna wear a little bit of chocolate cake.
She finishes sifting.
All right, now the next thing to add is my 3/4 of a cup of light brown sugar.
She pops it onto the sifted ingredients.
Because light brown sugar is moist, you can't sift it in with your dry ingredients, so that's why it goes in afterwards.
She puts the bowl on the stand mixer.
I've got 3/4 of a cup of unsalted butter that I've cut up and softened to just below room temperature. Slightly cool is okay.
She adds it.
And I also have a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil.
She pours that on, lowers the mixing arm, and starts the mixer on a slow setting. And later,
There we go. Once you see that there are no longer big pieces of butter, then it's time to add your liquid.
she grabs a bowl.
I've got 4 whole eggs and 2 egg yolks.
Unshelled.
I have 3/4 of a cup of milk.
She adds it to the eggs.
Low fat or 2% is fine. And I'll add my vanilla.
She pours it straight from the bottle.
Just give this a little whisk. And you can add this all at once
She grabs her wet ingredients
to your mixing bowl.
and adds them all to what was mixed previously.
I'll start this on low speed to combine the ingredients, then I'll increase it to medium to really build some structure and get some air into the cake batter. It only has to go for about a minute or 2.
And so, a minute or 2 later,
So you can see how it's changed and it's become thick, glossy, almost like a pudding, and a little lighter in color. That's when you know it's ready. The last thing to add is my melted chocolate.
she pours it in, restarts her mixer on low, then she grabs some cake pans.
I've got my 3 8-inch pans, greased, bottoms lined with parchment, and a little dusting of flour on the sides. And you just have to pour the batter in.
Which she now does.
I've preheated my oven to 350, and the cakes take 30 to 35 minutes. You test the doneness by inserting a skewer in the center. If it comes out free of crumbs, you know you're set.
She puts the pans in the oven and closes it.
While the cakes bake, I might as well make my chocolate fillings. I'm going to measure 1/2 a cup of milk into my pot and a 1/4 cup of milk into my bowl that I'm going to add my eggs to. And in addition to the milk, I'm also adding water in the same amounts.
To both the pot on the stove and the bowl.
I will also add 1/2 of the sugar. Now the total measurement is 2/3 of a cup.
Into the pot on the stove.
You don't have to measure precisely. I'll just get about 1/2 of that into the pot. The other 1/2 goes into the bowl
She pours it.
with the milk and the water. All right, and the last thing to add to the pot right now, 6 tablespoons of cocoa powder, either black cocoa or Dutch process. The choice is yours.
She taps it all out.
I want to heat the milk, water, sugar, and cocoa until it just reaches a simmer.
She stirs thoroughly with a whisk, also getting the sides of the
There
pot.
we go. So while that's heating, I can separate my eggs. I need the yolks. I'll save the whites for something else later.
She pours the open eggs from half shell to half shell to separate them and adds the yolks to the bowl.
The traditional pastry cream uses all milk, a lot of egg yolks, and a little bit of cornstarch. This is more like a pudding because I've got that combination of milk and water.
In the pot.
Fewer egg yolks.
In the bowl.
And more cornstarch, 1/4 cup.
She pours it.
And that gets added to the yolks. So I've got the sugar, the milk, and the cornstarch in here.
In the bowl.
And that's actually protecting the eggs. So once I heat up my mixture,
In the pot.
I'm less likely to curdle the eggs.
She now whisks the yolk mixture.
I've got a little cocoa on my whisk, but that's okay.
Now she gives what's in the pot on the stove a little whisk, too.
As soon as you see a few bubbles breaking the surface,
She picks the pot up.
then you can pull it from the heat, but you will bring it back to the heat. And then gradually pour this into your now cold
As she continues to whisk,
egg mixture. And you can add it quite quickly because you have those cold ingredients already protecting it.
now she grabs the bowl and pours.
And everything goes back into the pot.
She puts the pot back onto the heat.
You need to bring this to a complete simmer. You want to see bubbles breaking the surface. Then you know the cornstarch is fully thickened.
She keeps whisking as it warms.
I also have 3 ounces of chocolate plus 3 tablespoons of butter ready, because once this is thickened, I pour it right on top of the chocolate. And just like the coffee melted the chocolate for my cake batter, this does the same.
And later, as the liquid in the pot starts to bubble,
You can always tell when your pastry cream or pudding is going to thicken, because all of a sudden, the big bubbles turn into small bubbles as it starts thickening up. So you can see I pull it off the heat just to slow it down so I can whisk it through. That way I won't have the pudding sticking to the bottom of the pot. But I'll return it to make sure I get those first few bubbles. There we go.
she hits a button on the stove
Off the heat.
and takes the pot off the element again.
Oh,
The mixture has
that
thickened.
is intense, and it smells incredible.
She lifts the pot
Now,
and pours,
right onto my butter and chocolate.
both chopped into pieces in a bowl,
Just give it a good stir.
thoroughly but gently with a spatula.
Let that chocolate and butter melt through.
Now she smooths the top.
And then, because it is almost like a pudding, a piece of plastic or parchment right on the surface
She pats on plastic.
prevents the skin from forming. I'll set this aside to cool. And since my cakes still need time to bake, I might as well make that third chocolate element, the ganache topping. So I have 6 more ounces of chocolate. So this cake has 12 ounces of chocolate, 3/4 of a pound. And at the same time, I'll heat my 1/2 cup of whipping cream,
She pours it into a pot on the stove.
2 tablespoons of unsalted butter.
She pops that in too.
The cream takes no time to heat up.
And so just a few minutes later,
Once you've got a full boil,
she turns the stove off.
take it off the heat. Pour it on top of the chocolate. Are you getting a theme here? You pour the hot liquid on the chocolate, you let it sit. So I'm just gonna stir gently.
With a
Let the
spatula,
hot cream and butter do its thing. Make friends with the chocolate.
again stirring gently.
We're all gonna be making friends with the chocolate after we blow out the candles.
And when it's fully melted,
All right, nice and smooth.
she pours it into another bowl.
All right, we got all our work done in one go. So I'll let the cakes cool, my fillings cool and chill, and then all that's left to do is to have fun assembling this sophisticated cake.
Later, returning with the cooled fillings.
Okay, the best part when it comes to birthday cake, assembling it. No, wait, eating it is the best part, but we have to assemble it first. So let's just get right to it.
Onto the first cake
So I put a generous layer, about 1/4
of the frosting.
of my batch, and I spread starting in the center.
On top of the second cake, which she capped the first with.
And if you push a little bit towards the outer edge, just past the cake a little bit,
So it drips over the sides
you'll find it easier
of the top layer,
when it comes to masking the sides of the cake.
which she does by rotating her cake against the blade of a spatula.
So just like a chocolate truffle, this is that chocolatey filling that takes this cake to the next level.
the ganache.
So you almost get a chocolate ombre effect on the side of the cake
She
here.
covers her entire frosted cake with it.
Now the finishing touch before I pop this in the fridge,
She grabs a bowl.
how about a little gold flake?
She pops several leaves on the top with tweezers.
Now that is one sophisticated birthday cake. It's elegant, it's understated, but believe me, the flavor is anything but understated. I know the chocolate lover in your family is going to be thrilled. And so will you, because you'll feel proud having made it to serve.
She smiles.